Blood Communion by Anne Rice. This is the 15th and seems to be final book in the Vampire Chronicles, but I'll get to that later on in the video. Blood Communion is more or less a story of the finalization of the vampire government and the conclusion of the rivalry between Lestat and the elder vampire Roshamandes, despite what Lestat has done for Roshamandes, declaring that he's not to be attacked, saying that he's allowed at court. Roshamandes is determined to get revenge on Lestat one way or another, no matter what. And this ends up spiraling into something that ultimately goes out of control. It results in the abduction of some vampire characters that Lestat holds dear, and in order to prevent any more abductions, he willingly gives himself up to Rosh. Now, the Replamoids from the previous book reappear in this book in a minuscule capacity, and by this point Lestat is calling them the Children of Atlantis, fitting name for them. Rosh himself seems to me to come across as a very tragic character. He wants things to go one way, they don't go that way, he tries to do it a different way, it also doesn't go that way. And although I really don't like the fact that he was trying to go after Lestat, I can understand why he was vengeful. I can understand why he continued harboring a huge hatred towards Lestat. And ultimately what happens to him is not that surprising to me, really. If he approached things differently, things might have turned out differently for him. Blood Communion, as far as length is concerned, is not a very long book. The previous two books were like 600 something and 500 something pages respectively. Blood Communion was only 200 and something. Not a very long book at all. Maybe around 300 at the most, but that's kind of pushing it. It was not meant to be a long story. It was meant to be a finisher, meant to be something that rounds everything, brings it all together. And by the time I closed the book, I have to say, I thought it did a pretty good job of bringing a conclusion to the Vampire Chronicles. And I'm not talking about the same type of conclusion that, you know, Anne Rice had originally written in Blood Canticle that left it wide open. Technically, you could say it's open, but there was a very final way in which the book was written, and not just because it has the end at the end of the book. There's a lot of books in the Vampire Chronicles that have the end or end on the final page. But the way Lestat wrote it, the way Anne Rice wrote Lestat writing this book, it definitely comes across to me like this is meant to be the final tale. Blood Communion is meant to be the actual final book in the series. I mean, and this makes sense. I mean, Anne's in what, her 70s now? So, I mean, it's great that she managed to pump out a few more tales for the story of Lestat and the other vampires that we all know and love so well. But by the same token, you know, she's getting to the point where maybe it's time to hang up the towel and, you know, finally put an end to it. So I like the way it was handled. There was a few points where I wasn't too sure how I would feel, but the way the conflict with Roshamandes was handled, the stuff that came before and after that, and especially the end. Like, the end is so, oh gosh, how do I put this? It's so very sweet. It is very happy. It is peaceful. It's meant to be a happy ending, a relatively happy ending. And although I'm kind of surprised that certain characters survived, it's not exactly a bad thing for me. I was pretty happy that pretty much the characters that I liked, and even some that I didn't, are still around to the very end. So, I mean, that's cool. I thought for sure I was going to give this 4 stars, and of course on Goodreads it is 4 stars because you only do full stars there. But on the story graph I gave it a 3.5. It came very close to a 5-star book, didn't quite hit that point, but it was very, very close. I was very pleased. I was very thrilled with the writing, the characterization, the events that unfolded, and although the conclusion of the book might have dragged out a bit long for some people, it didn't bother me at all. It was very appropriate. It worked. It worked really well. Alright, that was my thoughts, my basic thoughts on Blood Communion by Anne Rice. Stay tuned for next week's video because I will be doing a spoilers discussion video for pretty much anything from the series that sticks out at me. I hope you'll join me then. And I would like to thank you for watching this video today, and I will talk to you later. Bye!